If you are thinking about attending a poetry show, running a poetry show, performing at a poetry show, then these are some things that you want to consider. We are here today with Tiffany or Articulite from your name of the show, Hot Sauce Poetry.
Yes, Hot Sauce Poetry.
How long have you guys been in the game for?
Man, it will be 15 years July. We actually started June of 2009 in Chicago.
Were you part of like the founding team?
Yeah, I'm the president, the founder.
Oh,
it was just me by myself before I even had a team. I'm telling you, built it from the ground up. And it was a clean poetry set, so it kind of threw people off because a lot of people don't like doing inspirational, clean, poetry sets.
How did, it's not often that we see a show that one has been around for so long and that two has an established team. How big is your team right now?
Wow, okay. So let me see. We have probably about 10 people. And it's spread out because some in Wisconsin, some in Columbus, and in Chicago as well. Mm.
How do you manage a team that's spread out geographically like that?
You know what? I would say taking time to speak to everybody. So if we're doing something in Wisconsin, I'm speaking to them, letting them know like what we got to do, blase, blase. The next month, okay, this is what we have to do, X, Y, Z. And it's pretty much as good to we have 30 days in a month. So it's pretty much enough time. And most of them kind of like know what to do already, tell them a little bit of a few things. Or half of the time it's people that have been to the show already. And they kind of like, oh, can I be a part? I'm like, sure. Matter of fact, we need more volunteers. If you're in Chicago, if you're in Columbus, if you'd like to volunteer for Hot Sauce Poetry, look us up, hotsaucepoetry@gmail.com.
Let's actually speak to that. So maybe not even necessarily for Hot Sauce, but maybe people are like, wait, you need volunteers for a show? Like, what does a volunteer even need to do if they're a part of this?
Great, let me tell you. Volunteers to walk people to their seat. Volunteers to pass out the email list so people can sign their name on the email. Volunteers to help the sound person. Volunteers to help the camera person. Volunteers for the door. Yeah. We have a couple of... We got some positions available for you if you're interested. And not only that, when you volunteer, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get all of our resources. So if you're a poet and you volunteer in Chicago, then you're going to have access if you want information or want to learn things or want to perform in Columbus or Wisconsin or any other networks that we have. Also, you'll be able to see how we run the show also, or any connections in any other areas. So you get a lot of resources because I try to give people all the resources I know. You may say, hey, I want to try to have some shows or do something on a local TV network, on a radio network, and so forth. So you will get access to our network and resources.
So are you guys an entity? Like
yeah,
LLC
LLC.
Or nonprofit or
LLC?
For profit?
Yes, for profit.
Okay. What made you? No, because I think this is a big part of like the Diverse's mission is so much of poetry. You notice so much of poetry is nonprofit based. So much of it's philanthropy. So much of it's grants. So much of it is trying to, really approach poetry from I'm going to win contests from organizations, or I'm going to apply for this grant that's coming out, or I'm trying to get this award. There's less of kind of that business sort of mindset, like, I'm going to make my income from poetry. Like, it's going to be sustaining me financially, but also creatively. That sort of mindset is not as common, I think.
It is not, honey. Let me tell you. I need somebody give me some popcorn and some. Sure, I need a mimosa.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, because I used to work in the insurance business for 17 years. I resigned from insurance to do the creative arts full time. We have not been getting, I would say, large sponsorships. A lot of we have got sponsorships, but not large sponsorships. We're working on that as we speak, actually. But a lot of ours are coming from donations, people paying at the door, advance tickets, vendors, as well. And this is the thing I'm going to talk about, and maybe I shouldn't even piggyback on this route, but I'm going to talk about it. So I know I'm a poet, spoken word artist, and I'm a promoter. And I believe that, yes, we should pay artists what they're worth. But if you cannot afford that particular artist for the amount that they offer, then, and then you tell that poet, hey, I respect you as an artist, but I can't afford you right now because we're independent. We're not on like a super, super large scale, even though people feel that we are. This is what we have. If you are okay with it, great. If not, please don't think we're trying to belittle you because we are independent. And the reason why I said that is because, and I don't know if I can say this on air, Ice Cube, when Ice Cube was coming from hip hop, well, not hip hop, when Ice Cube was coming from gangster rap to acting, and then he got into producing, he was telling these actors, I have a limited budget. I cannot pay y'all what the grand scheme of things of what you all supposed to be paid. I have a limited budget. So you have some people that want to talk about Ice Cube. He not paying me what I supposed to. He not paying me what I supposed to, or whatever. And he's telling you, this is my budget. Blase, blase. If you okay with it, great. And so Cat Williams, he had mentioned something similar to that in the Club Shay Shay interview. The thing is that people have to understand some independent artists may not have the same amount of money as some other organizations or people on a high scale. And I think the artist side of a person may not understand the side of the producer, the business owner, because they only understand the artist part. So sometimes I want artists to understand the side of the promoter and not to get upset at the promoter if the promoter offers you something and then you say no and they say thank you and they go on. You as the artist shouldn't be mad at the promoter because that is probably what they have in their budget.
I think that also speaks to the power of negotiation because I may not be able to pay you, but there may be other things I can do to assist. And I'm not talking about exposure because I know some folks are like, oh, I don't want to get paid in exposure. I'm not just talking that. One of the things that, for instance, we do with the Verses is, I mean, for instance, let's just in terms of like the equipment we have. It's just like, all right, maybe I can't afford to pay you the amount, but I'll pay you something that we agree on. I'll include things like a headshot. I'll include things like we'll record your performance professionally and give it to you, which you can then use as your portfolio because you've probably seen it too. There's a lot of, relatively big name poets who I think you see this especially outside of like spoken word and performance poetry who you try to find online recordings of them, you try to find audio of them, you try to find video of them, and there's nothing to be found. There's nothing there. So it's like, this is 2024. Like, this is the direction that things are moving in. Video is a super powerful medium. And so, I'll pay you this rate. I'll give you this professional quality video that you can put on your own website and break into smaller sections and do what you want for your socials and things like that. Like, I think, and there's probably other strategies too that we can incorporate into it becomes a complete package.
Yes. And you brought up a good point because, yes, that's also being offered as well. We do suggest that as well. You get a video of your performance. We're going to take pictures of your performance as well. Also, marketing. And I know people tired of the exposure word. I don't even use the word exposure. That's like you cussing somebody out. You cannot say, we don't use that no more. Like, look, any upcoming promoters and poets, don't say like, oh yeah, exposure. No, don't say that. Use it. Look, you're a poet. Go in a thesaurus and look for another word. Like, what can I use beside exposure? Because, you cussing people out when you say that now. A lot of people don't realize that. But yeah, so I love the art. I love the poets. I love the creative style of the arts of the poets. I see people always mention the same thing, and I don't think that's going to change. We're not paid enough. We're not seen enough, But I believe this is the time. This is the rise of the poets. We got the Grammy categories now. We used to have the Stellar Music Award category back in the days. So I think that poetry in the general, spoken word poetry, is going to keep climbing and climbing and climbing, and before you know it, on major stations where you hearing Drake or you hearing Jay-Z, then you're going to also hear a spoken word artist, as well. I'm sure that time is going to be coming. I already feel it. I already know it.
I appreciate you saying that. One of my I have several long-term visions. One of the long-term visions I have is starting like a radio, like our own radio channel.
Yes.
So it's like 24/7 poetry recordings, things like that. There's no reason in 2024 it can't happen. Because that's the thing, like there's so many things now that weren't even in existence 5 years ago and 10 years ago. Which also means that right now there's also no reason for you to make poetry into a business if you want to. That's not to say it's easy, and that's not to say that it's just going to happen automatically. It's work. It's a business. There's a lot. When we think business, we think you got to find clients.
Yes.
You got to have an offer. You have to be able to identify like the market research and trends.
Yes.
There's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of poets don't have that background, so you have to be willing to learn on the fly. But at the same time, the idea that I'm poor because I'm a poet, it just doesn't fly.
It doesn't. Yeah.
You're poor because you're choosing to be poor, and you're not using poetry to advance it. Like if you really want it, we can find ways to do it. Like I challenge people. It's like, if you had to make $5 from poetry tomorrow, what would you do?
Yeah. Oh, you asking me that question?
Or like just in general, yeah. But if you have a comment, or like, what would if you had to do $5 for poetry? What would you do tomorrow?
If I had to make $5,
if you had to make $5 from poetry tomorrow, what would you do?
Oh, absolutely, go down to downtown Chicago and look. I don't have a peddler's license. I'll hurry up and do something for about a good 20 minutes with a little bucket, and you'd be surprised of the giving spirit that people have, I would say. So, because back in the days, we used to have CDs. People would purchase the CDs. Now we lose it. We're like, what we gonna do now? All our stuff is on Spotify and Tidal and, Apple Music and everything. People are not buying CDs no more,
I want to speak to your show. I mean, your show, again, it's in multiple locations. It didn't start that way.
It didn't. Ooh.
And you've been in the game for 15 years, because I think sometimes it's very easy to see where someone is right now and compare where you are right now to where someone else is right now without really understanding that, no, you need to be comparing yourself right now to where the person was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, starting the journey. It's like, let's imagine we have someone that's thinking about starting their own show and ending up with the result where you are right now. What's it take?
It takes consistence. I'm telling you, consistent and persistent. Because when we started out, we had to do a lot of marketing. And we started out on the west side of Chicago. It was in the hood. Some people didn't even want to come over to that area. But the venue was beautiful. So the room was mostly filled with majority of poets. And I wanted a general audience and poets. But when I first was doing the show at Hot Sauce Poetry, now let me say June of 2009, when I started Hot Sauce Poetry, I was a part of another organization that put on shows, and then I was putting on shows solo myself. I would have to say maybe about 2 or 3 shows before I started Hot Sauce Poetry. And those shows, it was a mixture of poets and the audience. But when I started Hot Sauce Poetry on the west side, we didn't have a lot of people coming out. I mean, it was a decent amount, but we didn't have a lot of people coming out. And those people that came out were all poets. So we was almost like everybody performing in front of each other. Yeah. And I was like, okay, we gotta fix that. We gotta stop that. We gotta figure out what we're gonna do, So I started going out to different other poetry sets, talking to audience, printed out more flyers. I printed out more flyers. I was doing footwork. This was before the internet was that strong. I was working 2 jobs. So I would work 2 jobs, pass out some flyers to coworkers. Everywhere I was going, McDonald's drive-thru. You know what I did with a McDonald's drive-thru? I had an 8x10 flyer. I was like, I got this tape. And while I'm asking for a Big Mac and fries on the speaker, I'm already putting the flyer on the speaker already. So whoever going through that drive-through, you'll be able to see the sign there. Now, I know once they realize that sign going to be on that drive-through, they're going to be taking that sign down probably in the next hour or two, or they might forget, because sometimes if you go to the hood, they don't pay attention. They don't care. They ain't gonna go outside, taking no sign down. So sometimes by putting a flyer in the drive-through speaker when you hollering out for your order, Big Mac and fries, chicken nugget and fries with extra sauce. Sometimes you got to talk long or whatever, because you got to put the tape on the flyer and everything. So you try to tell them like, wait a minute, hold up, let me think about my order. Putting the flyer on the drive, then you want to put another flyer on there in case they take that out. Wait a minute now. Okay, now, is the ice cream machine working? So why do they trying to figure out the ice cream machine working, using that time to put the flyers on the drive-through window and everything.
They got cameras now. But I hear the strategy.
Now sometimes, I did run into some places with cameras. I did.
I get the idea though. I see you out here hustling.
I had to do that for a long period of time. It was working though. It did work.
I think that's something that a lot of poets miss is let's approach it like this. I think ask a poet how many people did they think they could fill a room with. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of poets, 10 people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of them just feeling guilty and feeling pressure.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of poets. Some of your bigger names, 50 people.
Mm-hmm.
But then we approach, like, for instance, like the Rupi Kaurs of the world, 2,000 people filling an auditorium, And I think the thing that's really important, and that speaks to what you're talking about with flyers and just kind of the hustle, is that it all comes down to reach. It all comes down to reach. Because Rupi Kaur, how many people do you think Rupi Kaur reaches?
I don't know. Because it do depends on reaches. And not only that, because once the other people know, they spread it to the other people, and they spread it to the other people. And then the word of mouth travel. Actually, word of mouth travel stronger than them flyers and them the word of mouth is strong,
That's, I don't know if you follow marketers or all. One marketer I really like is Seth Godin.
Okay.
And Seth Godin has this concept. He has a book called Purple Cow, which I haven't read, but just kind of summaries from it, which speaks to the idea that we need to be remarkable. Not remarkable in the sense of like high quality good, but remarkable in the real essence of the word, able to generate a remark. Because the reality is that if we are the only one talking about what we do, it is never going to achieve much velocity. But the minute that we can leave a room and people are talking about what we're doing with other people, that is when you're actually creating something that is remarkable and that can grow. And the more people you get knowing about you, for instance, again, going back to the Rupi Kaur example, millions of people know who Rupi Kaur is, literally millions. But at the same time, millions know who she is, but the auditorium she's filling is 2,000, which is great, but it's also we're talking 1% of people are coming out, or less, So, but that speaks to the scale that we need. If we're trying to fill, if you're having an event and you're trying to fill 100 seats, that literally means you probably need to reach about 10,000 people.
Absolutely. I used to always calculate to do that same scale back in the days. I'm like, this many people, that means that I have to reach out to these many people. I was so glad that the internet and marketing and Facebook and paying for ads and all of that came into play, because that stopped me from doing all that walking, even though it was helping me lose some weight. But, it was like it's pros and cons, but it's awesome to let the internet do the work, for you. But sometimes we do need to go back to that grassroots of, putting up a flyer or giving a flyer, or one person had told me, it was this guy, he's a comedian, and also he a promoter, and everywhere he go, no matter what, if he's picking up his clothes, he giving somebody a flyer. If he's going to the gas station to get some gas, he giving somebody a flyer. Now, I would say I'm guilty. I can't do that every day, 30 days a week, 8 hours a day. Now I can do it some days, like the time I go to McDonald's or whatever, like I'm gonna do it. This is the day I'm gonna do it, but that consistency, I admire you if you can do that every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also just in terms of flyers, like 100 flyers isn't enough.
It's not. Oh, no, definitely not.
Like definitely. A lot of companies, if they're doing flyers, their test run is like 500 to 1,000.
Absolutely.
And then after that, they're multiplying that by like 10.
I know what we're doing a lot now is letting businesses, talk about their services and so forth. And sometimes it helps too if you put businesses on your flyer. They can actually, spread the word as well, or the vendor on your flyer also. And a lot of time you'd be surprised because sometimes you might have some who's in your room. Sometimes people pay certain high profile people to, post their event or mention their event as well. What you think about that?
I mean, you're leveraging. I think a lot of times, especially if you don't have that level of prestige yourself, it's a common business strategy. There's another marketer named Daniel Priestley. That's actually one of the strategies he recommends is that like if you're starting a business but you don't have that clout in the industry, what do you do? Well, you get someone that does, and you pay them like a certain. You can do a commission or something like that. Like I'll give you 30% of our sales or whatever. You're basically using. They have the name you need. You're getting people familiar with you. It's a way to jumpstart it. So it works. It's a strategy that works, but I think you also want to make sure it's something that's aligned with your mission.
Absolutely. How do you feel about people that say, bad poetry versus good poetry? I always hear people judge bad poetry over good poetry. Is it really bad? Is it really bad poetry? Is it according to taste, or do you consider bad poetry of someone that's not have rhythm in their poems, or they're not being creative enough? Because I have my definition of bad poetry, and somebody else may consider that good poetry. But what are your?
That's a great. Give me 1 second. I have to adjust that camera, and then let's dive into it because this interview's going to take all night. Oh my gosh. There's so many good things here. I think there was a time where I really did believe in that concept of bad poetry and good poetry. And I think part of the reason was this was a time when I still believed that craft was the thing that's going to separate you. And what I've learned, and this is... if you've seen our other videos, I've talked about this before, is that I was attending a retreat working with, it was Callaloo. I was working with Ivy Francis, and she pulled me aside and she's like, Geoff, you have the best craft in the cohort, but that doesn't mean you write the best poems. And that really stuck with me, and something that I've learned a lot since then is the power of presentation. I think a lot of times, especially, I think you see this a lot, especially with like page poets, is you see people really honing in on the craft, like really getting the devices and everything. It's like so fine tuned, and yet they have no presentation skills whatsoever. And I think what we find is that craft is important. Craft is the prerequisite, but at a certain point, you're not going to be able to achieve mass readership or the readership that you may desire just purely off of craft, because craft on its own isn't necessarily remarkable. Going back to that, so we have to find ways that reach people. We have to develop those kind of marketing skills, in all honesty. And a lot of poets don't like that, because poets hear business and they cringe, and they think it's like sacrificing the art. I get it, but there's ways that you can make it work together. All this to say, going back to the question, good poetry versus bad poetry, I think it all comes down to audience and who are you trying to reach. So for instance, let's use the Rupi Kaur example. I personally wouldn't buy a book of Rupi Kaur's poetry.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not her audience.
Mm-hmm.
Her audience is the audience she's built on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So who am I to say that my poetry is better than hers?
Mm-hmm.
She's filling auditoriums. I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about who are you writing for,
Mm-hmm.
and how successfully are your poems being received by the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the greater determiner of quality, because you don't, in a lot of ways, you don't determine the quality of your own work.
That's true. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Talk to me.
It depends on reason why I say yeah, because if you're writing for yourself and you decided to read it to the audience, to yourself, it's quality. Because you know what? In quality, in the instance of you wrote a poem that helped you get out of something.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote a poem that every time you read it, it inspires you and motivates you. But so to you it's quality, but someone else like you could have rearranged this
Mm-hmm.
way, rearranged that way. That's quality in their eyes, and in your eyes, it's quality.
I don't disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times when poets say they're their own audience, I think they're not being honest.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually we were talking about this a minute ago. So right now we're in the middle of we're hosting our retreat. This is our 4th retreat this year. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
really exciting. We have a great group, and this is a topic that came up a bit today. Is again this topic of audience, because if you say this poem is for me,
Mm-hmm.
and you read that poem out loud,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets no snaps, it gets no rewinds, it gets no claps, it gets no people shouting back at you, and you get upset,
Mm-hmm.
there's a disconnect,
That's true.
because you say this poem's just for you, but you're not getting the response from the audience
Mm-hmm.
that you say isn't important, because the poem's for you,
Mm-hmm.
but apparently it's not just for you, because you're responding negatively to it. So I think we have to be honest with ourselves, and it's okay if the poem's not just for you.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also have to ask ourselves, who is the poem for, and are we okay it's for them, and how are we making sure that the poem is for them?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say this, a lot of times when you make that poem for yourself, it's for yourself. Now, you can choose. If you're going to read it for the audience, you may say, you know what, let me change a couple of lines just for this order. I'm just going to change one line, Like, I'm just going to give you an example on the spot. Let's say, for instance, you have this poem called, let's say the original title of the poem was, you don't have to feel sad if you're broke. I was sad and broke. You don't have to feel sad. But then you can come out, that could be for you. But then let's say for the audience, you may want to start off with, you don't got to be a bust down if you're broke down. Because, people are like, bust down? She talking about bust down? Who busting down? You're broke. So, you getting their attention. Now this for the audience. Like, ooh, let me listen now. So it's kind of like, it's the same poem, but we got to just change that, just that first line, just to wake them up or whatever. So I think you got that's if you're trying to get the claps or whatever,
I think it's really important that you mentioned first line. I think it's valid for so many aspects. Like, I was going to relate it to poetry, but it extends beyond that. It's really, the more I have like a teaching business online, like English pronunciation teaching, but the more, it's just funny how the world works, because the more you learn about one field, the more you see it applies to all the other fields. Mm-hmm. Everything's so connected. Mm-hmm. In a poem, your first impression comes from your title and your first line.
Absolutely. That's how
whether it's on the page,
mm-hmm.
whether it's a spoken word,
mm-hmm.
Whether you're on the stage. But this is also true for any interaction you have with a person. Mm-hmm. The most valuable moment you have is that very first time you meet someone. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to take a moment to kind of prepare yourself for, like, the next time I meet someone, how do I want to introduce myself? Mm-hmm. Because you can't ever replace that. And words are powerful. We don't have words to waste. Everything's really important. We only get one interaction in that moment.
I did that when I met Dougie Fresh. Dougie Fresh, the hip hop beatbox guy. And when I tell you I was a fan of Dougie Fresh for years, my friend had said, Tiffany, we about to get ready to go and meet Dougie Fresh. And I was like, it's gonna be everybody surrounding Dougie Fresh. I'm probably gonna only have 2 seconds to say what I gotta say. So let me think what I'm gonna say before I, see Dougie Fresh in the concert and see him afterwards. So what I did was this. Everybody trying to, get pictures with Dougie Fresh. And so what I did was I just came down the hallway, started having a fake beatbox, like, and then I started, I forgot, I did something about, Lottie Dottie. No, that was, I think I said Lottie Dottie. No, that's Slick Rick. Well, whatever I did, I was like quoting this line, beatboxing, and then he looked around and he said, okay, a little bit stronger on that beatbox, whoever that is. And I just started getting stronger. He's like, okay, I see you over here. And so that kind of got his attention. And then he started, trying to, do the music or whatever, not the music, start rapping or whatever. And that was my way of getting his attention. So when he left the building, I was in the alley with a friend of mine, and I started beatboxing again. And he came over there, and he beatboxed with me. Oh my gosh, Dougie Fresh, beatbox with me. But I pre-thought about that ahead of time, like, okay, what I'm going to do to get Dougie Fresh's attention.
Imagine if we had that level of focus for every interaction that we had. Like, I think we meet someone and we're content to stick with what's comfortable and safe. Be like, oh, hi, I'm this, Yeah. And, the most valuable time when you meet someone is that very first step. You have a chance to be memorable. This goes back again to that concept of, being remarkable. What are you doing to make yourself really stand out?
Yeah.
And be memorable.
Yeah. A lot of my poems are inspirational poems, and comedy and inspirational. But sometimes I do try to hit them with a one-liner at the beginning. And it was this one line that I did in the very beginning, which was, which Bible are you reading, King James or Rick James? And it was just me just talking about my dating life and so forth. Like, I want to, I talk about a guy who say he want a virtuous woman, but he really want a super freak, or, he say he want this, but he want that, And then I asked, like, are you reading Rick James Bible or King James Bible? Which one you read? So sometimes I do certain lines to kind of wake people up.
It's important. It's similarly, like, if you're focusing on the page and you're trying to submit to get published, an editor might really like what you got going on in the middle of your poem, but if that first line isn't hooking, if that title's not working, if people won't even read to the middle, why are they going to publish your poem?
Yeah, that's true.
Why are they going to do it?
Do you think poets these days are concerned about their poems being stolen? Because I hear people say, oh, so-and-so stole a line in my poem, or this person talked about COVID. I talked about COVID. He stole my line. I was like, what's your thoughts about that?
We should probably make this last one for
that's
no, it's good.
We can go
for days, man. There's so much to talk about.
Because you're the interviewee. And
no, it's all good. No, but this is better. No, it's a conversation. We got to feed off each other. I think it's just because I didn't see it. I was much more involved in, like, the page scene.
Okay.
And I didn't see it as often there for a while. But then I've seen it, one social media platform. We're most active on YouTube and on Threads. The writing community on Threads, I think, has been very interesting to see. And there's a lot of poets I've seen on Threads that are bringing up this idea of people stealing work and things like that. Like, I guess it's not something that really bothers me personally, but maybe I'm biased because it hasn't happened to me, to my awareness. Maybe if it happened to me, I would feel differently. But I think, the people stealing work that I've written in the past don't have access to the work I'm going to make in the future. They don't, my own sense of originality, they don't have. And that's the more valuable thing. Like, yeah, I prefer if you don't take my poem, but I'm also confident that the poem, the poems I write, this year, I think are stronger than the poems I wrote last year.
I know that's right.
Like,
Yes.
so you know, you're capturing me on a part of a journey that I've long left. But at the same time, I mean, I see poets complaining about it happening. So I don't. It's tricky. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts in regards to that is get your stuff copywritten just in case. Copywritten, copyright.gov, and you know, just get it copywritten just in case. I did have someone steal my poem actually. But it was a high school student. My friend was a teacher, and it was a high school student who actually read my poem and said it was hers. Just so happened the teacher knew who I was and told the student, well, asked the student, did you write that? And the student said, yes. And she said, you couldn't have wrote that because I knew who the author was. The name of the poem I had was, Why Do You Call Yourself a Beautician? And that poem was pretty much all of my experience dealing with beauticians. And so anyway, she taught, my friend who's a teacher talked to the student about plagiarism and all of that. And, you know.
Those are the things. Gotcha. It's interesting you said. I think nowadays too, I haven't done this with poetry, but I've done it for my main business, teaching. So I created a textbook using Amazon KDP. So something, if you're really, really, really concerned about it, you could potentially take your poems, you know, compile them, publish it through Amazon KDP, you know.
I love that.
Things like that.
Get out of here. So let me ask you this. Would it hold up in a court of law?
I don't know, but I imagine, so I think, I mean, it's probably not a technical copyright, but at the same time,
it's probably cheaper.
You know, one of the things they because you're making a defense, right? So it's not technically a copyright, but I can show a judge like, oh, look, I put these poems together and published it on Amazon on this date. You know what I mean? So it's something that could at least be referred back to.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just an idea. I am not a lawyer.
Hey, that's good to look into. Good to look into that for real.
Yeah. Man, a lot of bombs like tonight. My God, all these gems. All these gems.
I got so much other stuff, but we have limited time.
We do. But we'll come back. Let's do this again sometime.
Yes,
Next time you're in Columbus or something.
absolutely.
We'll get this going. Guys, be sure to check out Hot Sauce Poetry in many cities.
Yes.
Where can we find it again? Chicago?
Yes, Chicago. Milwaukee, we taking a break. We're trying to do it in another state. We're trying to do that soon, but it's every third Saturday in Columbus, Ohio, every second Friday in Chicago. And even if you Google Hot Sauce Poetry, you'll be able to find us. I'm not going to give you a long email, I can, but just Google Hot Sauce Poetry. Our information is going to come up.
What's up? Once again, I'm Geoff from Diverses. This is Tiffany Articulite from Hot Sauce Poetry. Thank you guys for your time. We'll see you later. Okay?
Thank you.